But after years of using it, I think you could just summarize it as, you agree that your project has code of two categories. The boring code, which is the implementation details that you don't care that much about.
Or you should not care, because unfortunately, often it's the opposite.
Yeah, like the SQL queries you use, or what the database engine you use. It is important, of course, but probably it doesn't make your business win automatically. And on the other hand, there is the interesting code, the domain code, the logic of what your application does, sometimes called business logic. But I think this is a bit unfortunate term because it has those enterprise vibes. And I think people writing usual web applications maybe don't think of business code when they write the logic they do. But the fact is, it is some kind of domain code anyway, right?
Yeah, but it's worth mentioning that it depends heavily on what kind of application you're working on. Just a kind reminder. So this is no silver bullet podcast, live podcast. And it can suggest that it depends on different projects. Yeah? So as you said, so sometimes you have business logic, but sometimes it's as simple that you can have it in controllers mixed with SQL queries. But sometimes it's not that simple. You can go this way, and we did it in our lives, but it's a nightmare a bit later.
Yeah, but I think we can agree that one of the main points of CleanArch is to separate those two, right? To separate the interesting code from the implementation details.
Yes, and probably it's worth mentioning how it's done. So it's all about I think it's not the first time when we're mentioning that there are some old patterns that are still valid. And the same is for inversion of control. And the idea is that you can define interface on some behaviors that you expect, for example, from the database, from external providers. And thanks to having interface for that, your implementation doesn't need to know really how it's implemented under the hood. And again, if you're creating a simple application, it's not that big deal because the logic is not that complicated there. But if you are building more complex application and you are starting to mix all this stuff, it's super hard to maintain that. And this inversion of control helps you to cut this logic in multiple parts. And